Michael Jordan's longtime agent, David Falk, said LeBron is probably in his top 10 players of all time and went on to say this, quote, "I really like LeBron, but I think if Jordan had cherry-picked what teams he wanted to be on and had two other superstars, he would have won 15 championships." Stephen A., your reaction.
He was at a business conference, but obviously the cameras are rolling, microphones are on. I think it was an unnecessary shot at LeBron James. And I also think that it was a bit excessive because LeBron James is one of the top 2 or 3 players in the history of basketball. When people bring up top 5, top 10, now you are getting insulting. There are not 3 players, 4 players in NBA history better than LeBron James. That is a lie, okay? And David Falk knows that. Having said that, he ain't lying about the comparison to Jordan. If Jordan had picked to assemble a super team, you damn right he would have won about 10 titles, if not more. That's absolutely true. But that's not what Jordan did. And in the end, what LeBron is going to have to live with is the fact that you joined Miami for your first 2 titles. You went back to Cleveland, but there was Kyrie Irving, and the team was compelled to acquire Kevin Love, which obviously helped you. And then when you went to Los Angeles, you obviously got Anthony Davis. And so people are going to look at that and judge him accordingly, as opposed to somebody that stayed with one team, built it, won there first, last, and always. And that's going to be, in some people's eyes anyway, a blemish. I have no problem with that if the comparison is against Jordan. I do have a problem with it if you then try to look at LeBron and try to act like he's barely scratching the top 10 or whatever. LeBron James, in my estimation, is one of the top 2 players in the history of basketball. And if you want to drop him to 3 because of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's resume, which is impeccable and beats because he's won on every level, I get that part. But LeBron James, to me, is top 2 all time. I don't want to hear top 5, don't want to hear top 10.
Yeah, David Falk is one of the greatest agents of all time. Not only the deals he did with Michael Jordan, but some other business deals he's made that are really historic. Yes. He's kind of telling on himself a little bit here when he says probably top 10. He's telling on himself that he's not making an honest assessment. But we'll move past that. I do think it's an interesting thing to say what would happen if Jordan played in the modern era. Absolutely, especially like in 1998, when the Bulls were exhausted as a franchise, when Pippen was done, when Phil Jackson was done, when the Bulls management was done spending money. If Jordan didn't want to retire, if he wanted to move on, he absolutely could have won more titles. I don't think it's arguable at all. But if we're going to have the discussion about time and place, let's have the full discussion, because you can't just you can't cherry pick it. What if Hakeem Olajuwon decided to go team up with Karl Malone and John Stockton, like Kevin Durant went to the Warriors? What if after winning 1 title with Jordan at age 25, which is when Scottie Pippen, the same age as Kyrie Irving, what if Scottie Pippen wanted to trade to the New York Knicks? Because that's what happened with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving at age 25, after 1 title, forced his way out of Cleveland. What if Jordan was playing against a team like LeBron did when he had to go up against the super team that was formed in Boston with Garnett and Ray Allen and Paul Pierce? Sure, Jordan, if he wanted to cherry pick, absolutely could have done so. No question he could have won more titles. No doubt about that. But you can't look at it without looking at what was else happening in the league, what was going on around LeBron. And obviously LeBron is going to pay a price for going to Miami. People will always feel a certain way about that. But again, if you want to look at the full 360 degrees, if you want to say Kareem is up there, that's totally fine. You can make your case for Kareem. I'm not going to fight that. Kareem forced a trade that ended up being on a super team in Los Angeles. So I'm fine. If you just want to denigrate LeBron, which is what David Falk wanted to do, go for it. He can do it. It's his prerogative, whatever. But don't throw that out without having a more fair way to look at it.
Well, Wendy, I'm not going to allow David Falk to do that. And I think David Falk was a brilliant agent. I think he's built a brilliant business But to me, this one, that feels personal. That feels personal. So, it's interesting. Times reveal different opportunities for different players. And LeBron James was very fortunate with the time that he played in that Michael Jordan opened these doors, because Michael Jordan was a free agent twice in his career, right? These were longer-term deals that these guys had back then. And then Michael decided to sign a series of one-year deals, right? But also, when you look back on it, Michael Jordan had one of the greatest coaches of all time in Phil Jackson. He had a great front office that helped him in drafting Scottie Pippen and other players that helped him win championships. And, whenever somebody says terminology like cherry picking, that still doesn't get the job done. There was still a passing of the torch that happened between Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. LeBron James then did go back to Cleveland. I mean, Kyrie Irving hit one of the biggest shots in NBA basketball history for him to win a world championship. Then obviously going to LA, winning the game in the bubble. So like all of a sudden, it just diminishes the leadership. It diminishes the adaptability. It diminishes the greatness overall when you just speak flippantly about a player that is one of the best to ever do it. It's fine if you have more allegiance towards Michael Jordan, but that just feels extremely personal to me, Stephen A. It doesn't feel objective at all.
Well, I'm not refuting what you say, and I'll elaborate on your point in a minute. But just for clarification purposes, would you tell our audience why you feel it's personal? Specify where would the personal come from? What do you think is personal? Why do you think David Falk will be personal in this particular evaluation? Why do you think he's doing it?
Because I feel as if you can answer questions in a lot of different ways. Stephen A., you and I go to a lot of these, right? I see it all the time at different sports conferences where it's like, okay, that's a set me up question, right? I know there are cameras everywhere. I know what conference I'm at. Like, Stephen A., I've seen you at play. You are brilliant at setting the kitchen table for what you want to talk about. So for me, that seems premeditated. That doesn't just pop off the head. Okay. It's like, okay, now I'm going to use this moment to say this specifically. To me, that is a personal, premeditated mindset to have going into something where you could answer that question a lot of different ways, even if you did feel that way about LeBron James.
Okay. The reason why I was asking that question, you didn't go where I'm going to go, but I'm going to go here anyway because I think I'm on with the perfect cast, meaning you and Wendy, to elaborate more extensively on what I'm about to bring up. I've butted heads with David Falk in the past, obviously, with some of the clients that he's represented that I've had to cover, mainly Allen Iverson, amongst others. And I've grown, over the years, I grew to be very fond of David Falk. I think that he is an absolutely brilliant agent.
Yes.
One of the greatest in the history of all of sports. Agreed. Who is a brilliant man, a brilliant businessman, a brilliant representative who I think anybody should want fighting on their behalf because David Falk is that dude. But I do suspect that when he said what he said, although I agree with him with comparisons directly to Jordan, but nothing else, I thought the rest was insulting to LeBron James. I do get the sense